You probably saw this title and thought,
What do you mean by that?
and I'll get to that in just a second. As you probably know, the Oscars are coming up, and one of my favorite directors of all time, Christopher Nolan, has been nominated for Best Director. I don't want to jinx anything, but it's looking like this might be the year that he wins. Can you believe that Nolan has never won an Oscar for Best Director? It just goes to show that the Oscars don't mean anything. So this all got me thinking about why I love Christopher Nolan as a director, and I realized he's got a certain vibe to him. A vibe that I like to call Big D energy. But the D stands for director. And Nolan isn't the only one. There are two other directors that I can think of that have achieved Big D energy. So I'm going to be discussing 3 movie directors in this video and talking about why I think they fit this title of Big Director energy that I have created. Now you might be asking, what does it mean to have Big D energy? Well, I'm glad you asked. There are a bunch of factors to it. First off, in order for a director to achieve this status, they have to have a good filmography. They have to actually make great movies. But it's not just about that. It's also about who they are as a person, their personality, how they conduct themselves in interviews, and a couple other miscellaneous things that are specific to each director. It's a title that's loosely defined, but they at least have to be a good filmmaker. Once I start giving examples, you're gonna see what I mean. So let's start with the man of the hour, Christopher Nolan. First of all, this guy does not miss when it comes to making films. The one exception you could probably argue is The Dark Knight Rises, but I still think it's a good movie. This guy also always puts up big numbers at the box office. I mean, as long as we're not in a pandemic. Nolan is one of those rare filmmakers where he can make a movie that's completely original and not backed up by any IP and still have it do well at the box office. He can literally make a movie about anything and studios will buy it and people will go see it. And not many filmmakers can do that. Although this is the case for the other 2 filmmakers that I talk about in this video. But the praise doesn't stop there. Nolan also changed the superhero movie genre forever with The Dark Knight and showed non-superhero movie lovers that superhero movies can be cinematic masterpieces too. He also just comes up with insane stories that most people could never think of. And he makes these movies that seem confusing on the surface, but he writes them in a way that's easy to understand. Except Tenet. I still don't fully understand that film. His writing is honestly really impressive because I feel like it must take a genius to come up with this stuff. Even for a film that you would think to be simple, like a historical biopic, Nolan finds a way to take a film like that and tell it in a unique way by jumping back and forth in time, in the case of Oppenheimer. And speaking of Oppenheimer, that film is a massive achievement. In an era where every big blockbuster film is filled to the brim with CGI, Nolan made the big D move and chose to make the entire film without any CGI at all. And you would think that would cost a fortune to make, but the movie only costed $100 million. That is insane when you compare it to something like Secret Invasion, which costed $200 million to make. Why? It makes you wonder, where does all that money go when a film like Oppenheimer can look that amazing with only $100 million? Oppenheimer also has probably the most star-studded cast I've ever seen in a film. And the fact that there are this many known actors in the film, and yet the budget is this low, means that some of these actors must have signed on for this movie for little to no money. So they literally just did this movie because they wanted to be in a Christopher Nolan movie. That only happens when a director has reached God-tier status. Therefore, Nolan's got that big director energy. And on top of all that, he's just a regular guy. You would expect a filmmaker like him to be pretentious, but actually he's the exact opposite. In interviews, he presents himself as down to earth. I literally saw him do a TikTok for some influencer where he talked about what it's like to shoot on film.
We shoot on 70mm. The other format we use is 70mm IMAX. It's the highest quality imaging format ever devised.
That's so cool. Like, you don't see most directors doing that. And before I move on to the next director, I want to leave you guys off with this one clip.
What is your remote drop movie, Christopher? Wherever you're watching television and you see a film that is a favorite of yours, or you just don't mind binging it?
I mean, God, anything by Kubrick, it's a remote drop. And I mean, Talladega Nights, I'm never going to be able to switch that off.
Really?
What?
The Ballad of Ricky Bobby is a Christopher Nolan mic drop movie. Is that what you're saying?
If you ain't first, you're last.
That's right. Critically acclaimed, Academy Award nominated director Christopher Nolan loves watching Talladega Nights. This is why he qualifies for Big D Energy. He makes these amazing movies that directors dream of making, and yet he still loves lowbrow entertainment like your average moviegoer. Alright, let's move on to the next director. This guy is the director of one of my favorite movies of all time. I got the poster right behind me, and I'm also wearing the shirt for it today. Of course, I am talking about Quentin Tarantino. Now, Tarantino has got that Big D energy for different reasons than Nolan. Yes, he's an amazing filmmaker, and I stand by my opinion that he has never made a bad movie. I also think he's the best writer in Hollywood. I mean, no one can write dialogue like he can. The fact that he can keep the audience intrigued while his characters talk about something inconsequential to the plot deserves praise. But when it comes to his public persona, though, he's very different from Nolan. Basically, Tarantino ain't gonna take shit from anybody. And he's always been like that, even when he first started making movies.
When I write something, it's like, boom, this is it. If you want to make this, this is it. There'll be no changes. This is the movie I'm going to make. If you like this, then we should make it. If you don't like this, then I'll go with somebody else who does.
He sniffs right through stupid journalist questions.
Quentin, you have put Margot Robbie, a very talented actress, actor, in your film, and yet you haven't really given her many lines in the movie. And I just wanted to know why that was, that we don't hear her actually speaking very much.
Well, I just reject your hypotheses.
For a while, whenever he would come out with a new movie, for some reason, journalists felt the need to question him on his use of violence in his films and ask him if he thinks that movie violence leads to real violence. Tarantino, like the rest of us, is sick of this narrative and he shuts it down every time.
Why the need for so much gruesome, graphic violence? Why not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Jan. Get it?
But why are you so sure that there's no link between enjoying movie violence and enjoying real violence?
Don't ask me a question like that. I'm not biting. I refuse your question.
Why?
Because I refuse your question. The reason I don't want to talk about it is I've said everything I have to say about it.
No, but you haven't fleshed it out. That's the only reason.
It's not my job to flesh it out.
No, it's my job to try and ask you to.
And I'm shutting your butt down.
And lastly, I respect that he only wants to make 10 films. He'd rather end off on a high note and leave the people wanting more, instead of continuing to make films in his old age and have people think that he's a has-been. That shows immense restraint, and it solidifies Tarantino's big director energy vibe. The last director I want to talk about is the absolute king of the box office. That's right, I'm talking about Mr. James Cameron. He's made some absolute bangers. I'm talking Aliens, Terminator, Terminator 2, True Lies, and of course the Avatar films. For a while, his film Titanic was the highest grossing film of all time, making over $1.8 billion worldwide. And that was in 1997. Today, that would equal over $3.5 billion. No film has ever made that much money. But he didn't stop there. James Cameron said,
"You want to see me do it again?"
and dropped Avatar, which then took Titanic's #1 spot. It's amazing how a film like Avatar, a completely original idea that's not based on or connected to any IP, could make over $2.7 billion worldwide. That was in 2009. That would be over $3.9 billion today. So Cameron had the number 1 and the number 2 spot on the list of all-time box office numbers for 10 years until Avengers Endgame came along and took the top spot. Cameron actually gave respect to Marvel Studios and congratulated them when they surpassed him, and that was classy of him. And then he was like, just kidding, F you, and re-released Avatar to take his number 1 spot back. Man. Now that's some big D energy. After he released Avatar, James Cameron would not come out with another film for 13 years. I remember being a teenager and hearing about how James Cameron had plans for Avatar 3 and Avatar 4, and I was like, bro, you haven't even made Avatar 2 yet. But finally, after over 10 years, the trailers for Avatar 2 started to come out, and people were skeptical. So many people loved to hate on Avatar, saying it was overrated and that no one remembers it or talks about it anymore. I will agree with that last part. The hype for Avatar really fell off hard, but then Avatar: The Way of Water was released, a 3-hour and 12-minute movie, and by some miracle, it ended up making over $2.3 billion worldwide, making it the 3rd highest grossing film of all time. How the fuck do you do that? This movie really just kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I didn't really hear that many people talking about Avatar: The Way of Water before it came out, and yet it somehow made that much money in theaters. It's just amazing. Of the 4 highest grossing films of all time, 3 of them are James Cameron films. This guy's big D energy levels are off the charts.
It's over 9,000!
Not only does Cameron make great movies, but he also cares about the environment, especially the ocean. And he tries to get audiences to care about these things through his Avatar films. So he's actually doing good work out there, trying to help the Earth. He also just has so many mic drop moments. People like to say that Cameron has a big ego, but I think if you made 3 of the highest grossing films of all time, you deserve to have a big ego. More importantly though, every time he says something about modern Hollywood, he's not wrong.
When I think of films that have epic events in them, like let's say a Marvel Universe film where whole cities get destroyed and so on, they don't feel epic to me. But you seem to have the discipline, the vocabulary of actual epic filmmaking, that kind of grand proscenium frame that's just presented and takes its time with the music and so on to linger, and the little tiny figures. Weta Effects, as it's now known, is the best. I mean, ILM does great work, but when it comes to the kind of emotive, facial stuff that we're doing, I mean, Thanos, come on, give me a break. You saw this movie. It's not even close.
What you guys did is incredible.
The haters are just hating because he's right.
Why you booing me? I'm right.
Avatar 2 has the best facial animations out of any movie I've seen. Side note, isn't it embarrassing that Avatar, a movie from 2009, has better CGI than every superhero movie that comes out today? Finally, I want to show you my favorite James Cameron mic drop moment, and it comes from the production of the first Avatar.
We had 2 instructors from the Olympic team come to help work with our actors, and we showed them this idea of doing it backwards. And at first they were very skeptical.
And he said, you know, you can't shoot a bow that way. And I said, really? You can't? Come with me. So I got a bow from the prop man, and I got an arrow, and I walked out behind the studio, and I said, you see that bush over there that's about 75 meters away? He said, yes. And I went like that and hit it. And he said, oh, you can shoot a bow that way.
Come on. This man oozes big D energy. So those were 3 directors that I think qualify for my made-up title of Big Director Energy. This was a video that I was thinking about making for a long time. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my selections, and which director do you think has Big D energy? Maybe I'll make another video where I talk about more directors that I think fit this criteria. Please consider helping me out by subscribing to the channel. It's free, after all, and I would be forever grateful to you if you did. I really want to see this channel grow. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.